guys, welcome. We're going to wait a little bit to see if we got some people joining us. I announced it on Twitter, but it was probably only about a 45-minute notice. So we'll see who can join and who can't. I'm going to check our stream now. We'll give it a few more minutes. We're going to dive into our post-election, our first post-election national survey. Discuss some pretty good topics, mainly the review of the 2024 election, Trump's approval rating or favorability rating, how the voters, viewed the election, were they satisfied with the results, and what's the optimism for Trump or actually for us over the next 4 years. And then we'll look at some Biden's approval rating, and then we'll talk about the Hunter Biden pardon, see how that looks as well. It doesn't look too well, doesn't look too good, but I don't think Biden at this point is really concerned about that. The American voters spoke, and they spoke pretty clearly. I'm going to announce this on Twitter one more time. See if I can drop the link in there, get some guys over here. But if not, we got it recorded. We're going to press ahead here. Maybe some folks will trickle in here. I may have one of my buddies join us as well, just to keep the conversation flowing here. Keith is here. What's up? What's up, Mike? We got another one, Mike, here. I'm getting some text too. Hold on one sec. We got some guys wanting to join us. I'm going to give them just one more minute. And we're going to jump in. Let's see what we got. Okay, we're going to jump straight into this. So over the course of December 2nd to the 4th, we polled 800 registered voters. Puts us about a 3.5% margin of error, 95% confidence interval. I'm going to post all of this. Obviously, most of you guys know how I do this. We post the methodology and how we kind of, build our electorate. And not a whole lot has changed other than obviously the election's over. So we did throw in a recall vote. And I'll tell you about this particular question with the recall vote. Lo and behold, the response bias was greatly reduced post-election. I wish it was kind of easy as it was when we were doing the polling during the election season. I had very minimal weighting on this poll. The female to male ratio was just about where it was according to the crosstabs. So it was more like 52-48. With the gender role, which was never the case during when we were running these polls in September and October. We were getting heavy female response and a heavy Democratic response. And that really wasn't the case with this poll. It was skewed more Democrats, which is okay. It was a registered voter poll. And then you can weight accordingly, based off the very recent election results. But overall, this was not a hard sample to weight. By any means. So what we had was basically Harris was up maybe 1 point in the raw data. And by the time we just, fix some things, move some, adjusted for the white vote and turnout, and then, just some minor adjustments here and there among minority voters, we had Trump at 49 to 47, with 2% going to the another candidate, and 2% of these respondents said they did not vote. It's probably a little high. I don't know, but that's where we let it fall. And those were the results. Our crosstabs, based on that question, it looks a lot like the exit polling from November 5th's election. There's not a whole lot difference among this. We had Trump up about 12 points among the white vote. I think it was a little higher in the actual exit poll. It's probably more like 15 points or 16 points, but this is the way we weighted it, and this is how it kind of turned out. Again, Harris was up 3 points with the independent, so it's a little, it's similar. There's some differences here based on what, based on which exit polls you look at, but based on that, we do have Trump up +2 off the recall vote. So we jump straight into the Hunter Biden question here. And this is, I really wanted to set the tone and see what the respondents were, off the recent news of the Biden pardon, or the Hunter Biden pardon, and Biden's reluctance to say he was going to pardon his son. He was going to let he had confidence in the justice system and yada, yada, yada. Well, comes to find out it's this blanket pardon. It dates all the way back very suspiciously to 2014, which happens to be the Burisma, intrigue, where he's sitting on a board with, from a large energy company, and he had no experience in the energy field whatsoever. But in any case, that was the timeline in which he pardoned Hunter Biden, and we polled that question. As you can see, 63% of those respondents disapproved with Biden pardoning Hunter Biden, especially under the context and the pretext in which it was done. There was very little support for it. It's about 37%, which is probably Biden's hardline support. I don't think his approval rating went below 36. If you go look at the aggregate in RCPM 538, I think he might have been a little below that. So this is Biden's bunker support here, where they're not going anywhere no matter what. So in any case, we can see that this is a very unpopular move by Joe Biden, but I don't think that Joe Biden really cares at this point. It sounds like he's got some more pardons waiting. The election's over. Joe Biden's term is over in just a matter of a few weeks. I think he's just going to scrounge and pull out what he can. He's been mailing it in for a while now. I just don't think he really cares at this point. His career is wrapped up, and it was sealed when Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election. So, jumping into do you approve of Joe Biden's handling of as his presidency? We have him at 38% approval compared to 62% disapproval. We didn't ask the unsure question. We wanted to force it and see what we got here, and it comes out to 38-62. This is about normal. In fact, I was kind of surprised it was that high. I thought we were going to get around 36%, 37%, but it came out to about 38%. And we can look at the crosstabs here and see where his support is at. I mean, he is completely tanked among his white voters. Only 34% of this sample among white voters supported Trump. Black support, the African American vote, is down to 58% approval for Joe Biden. Those numbers, those are really crazy numbers. Typically, it's in the 80s, and even in some bad days, you'd expect it to be in the 60s. But that's not the case at all. We got the Hispanic vote around 40%, and then Asian other as well as low. Now, if you look at the 18 to 29, he still got around 41% of the approval. I was a little surprised by that, but that's how it shook out. I thought it'd be just a touch lower perhaps, but it wasn't. And then the 65 plus, he's still at 40% among them. Another little bit of a surprise. But the male and female vote, 36% of the male respondents approved of Joe Biden, and only 39% of the female respondents. So this is pretty much a crater. This is a tanking across the demographics. Nothing here is new. Biden's been pulling these type of numbers since 2021. I mean, he's been in sub 40 or at 40 for most of his presidency. I think his his term approval is around 41%. He obviously started tanking hard after the Afghanistan pullout or debacle, the withdrawal. I wouldn't call it a withdrawal. That was just a chaotic run to the exits. And the American people just never really forgave him for that, it seems. Plus, you add on the gaffes, this unsteady leadership, the age issue, very, questionable public appearances when he's falling and tripping and falling asleep. And it just was never really he just really never recovered. He never displayed confidence. The American people just simply couldn't get behind him. And this is just going to be a story throughout his presidency. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Me and Eric Dougherty have something planned tomorrow discussing Biden's legacy, discussing the last 4 years, and kind of how we ended up back to Trump with the Trump era still rolling. So here is something that may surprise a lot of folks, but I did see some other polling come out. I believe perhaps Tips and Emerson, and then there was another recent poll, Insider Advantage. But this is Trump's favorability ratings. He is at 53% favorability ratings. Some pollsters have him at 48 and 49, but this is based on our weighting. And you can see what we've had here before, and I'll show you the demographics. That Trump is Trump is soaring. This is unrecognizable from the Trump we know from 2016 to 2020. His favorabilities were typically around 45 and 46. Maybe on a good day 47, depending on the pollster. But we have Trump over 50%. In fact, it's 53%, 47 among those who are favorable and unfavorable. Here's the demographics for that. Looks something similar to the crosstabs or the exit polling, but he does have increased support. Among the white voters, 59% have favorable view of Trump. Look at the Hispanic vote; it's 50-50. That was a little surprising that it was that high. I expected to be in the 40s, high 40s, something similar to his vote. And then the African American vote's at 29%. I think he pulled in 13 or 14% of the African American vote on election day. His numbers are at 29%. I think Insider Advantage posted theirs today that had him in the low 30s. So again, and they were a little surprised by their results. So was I. But this is where it fell. The female vote is all the way up to 48% favorable view of Donald Trump. Now, he pulled in about 44 to 45%, depending on your exit polling. So he's already increased his numbers. He's increased his support, which is a good sign of optimism. The election's over. We're back in our honeymoon phase. Trump is getting the benefit of the doubt as he rolls into his term in January. And then we'll see what happens after that. The honeymoon phase ends, and it usually ends abruptly at some point. But in any case, this is new territory for Trump, as the American people have given him a second look and perhaps a second chance, and it's showing up here. So in your opinion, this is where we go with that. I didn't get into the details. I'll have more of that later, but I wanted to see the Supreme Court ruling on gender affirmation, all these really sticky issues, bathroom debates and whatnot. But I just wanted to encapsulate it and show it simply as wokeism. The American people, perhaps their memory will take over when they're tearing down statues, and we got whatever your wokeism issue is. It could be drag queen story hour, what have you. I just wanted to put it to the American people and see what their reaction was and how far these progressive policies have pushed the median voter, right? So we wrote something on our Substack, and I may share that in a minute, about the median voter and how the left is simply just veered off to the left. In any case, 56% of the Americans has said progressive policies, particularly wokeism, has gone too far over the past 4 years. We'll look at the crosstabs on this, and we see the white vote is 60% saying it's gone too far. Black vote is up to 34%. The Hispanic vote is 54%, 6% behind the white vote. Males overall 62% saying it's gone too far. The females are at 48%. You can look at the age, 18 to 29-year-olds. This was something that was again surprising. Now combined I combined these into two. So just to let you know. So again, across the demographics, the 45 to 64-year-olds up above 60%. So it looks like Americans have simply just turned against the more extreme element of this woke movement. And then you kind of correlate that with where corporate America is going, with they're just scrapping all the DEI programs. It seems like every week a new corporation or a university comes out saying, we're going to do away with DEI, the mandates, et cetera, et cetera. And it looks like there's people turning the page on this. Then you have the media kind of turning. You have more conservative writers being invited to the field, or to the fold, I should say. The Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, et cetera. It looks like there's a bit of a pivot, and there's sort of this olive branch, you could say, to work with Trump, especially when you have an election that, just like 2024, the media has to stay relevant, and it doesn't look like the 2016 resistance movement is a moneymaker for the media. So it looks like they're willing to play ball to a certain extent. So here's another interesting find. We posed the question, how satisfied are you with the outcome of the 2024 presidential election? We had 55% of the respondents said they were satisfied with the result. Now you compare that to Trump's final or top line numbers. We can round it up to 50%. It's 49.9. But if you round it up to 50% and you leave Harris, at 48.3, or you call it 50 to 48, a 2-point victory, what have you, Trump has actually increased his popularity, favorability post-election. So now we've got a 5% increase of those who said they are satisfied with the election. Now, on election night or the day after election, I think Trump's popular vote was at 51%, 51 point something change. So maybe it's not that surprising. But again, these numbers are a little higher than I thought they would be. I assumed that Trump would be over 50%. The honeymoon, 52%. But here we have 55% of those surveyed said they were satisfied with the election. So that's a larger margin than Trump's victory over Harris on actual election day. Again, we look here, it's similar to the questions that I posed before this, perhaps based on, whatever the issues were in terms of wokeism, or if we go up a little further here, the crosstabs are kind of staying somewhat similar, even on Trump's favorability ratings. We still have the Hispanics. I think the favorability was Hispanics was 50-50, but on their satisfaction of the 2024 election, it's 53-47. The African-American votes at 25%. The white votes now ticked up to 60%. Look at the 18 to 29-year-olds. We're at 46%. That's a huge increase among young voters, especially when you relate it back to, Clinton or even Biden in 2020. That large margin, that huge divide between Biden and Trump among the younger voters. But that's not what is materializing here. In 2024, there has been a huge shift among the electorate. Philosophically, I don't know if it's just exhaustion, or they're just really wanting to turn the page on Biden, and they actually had something to compare Trump's first term to, which was Biden's term, and they're like, we really prefer Trump on this one. We want to go back to Trump, and here we are. I mean, it's really been a pendulum swing here in that regard. The senior vote, I believe that was close to being tied between Trump and Harris, maybe Trump by one in the exit polling. But here we have Trump increasing that vote by 5% or 5 points. It's 45 to 64. I know Trump did pretty well in that age demographic, but again, his numbers are up to 60%. Look at the mail vote. 62% are satisfied with the results of that election. So again, big numbers for Trump. Huge, wind in his sails as he heads to Inauguration Day and immediately starts implementing the policies that he ran on, which he has a big first day planned if you follow the news cycles. All right. So speaking of that, this is where we kind of start putting the brakes on just a little bit. I wanted to pose the mandate question And I did help the respondents kind of recall some things here about imposing tariffs, the increased deportations, restructuring, or simply eliminating some of the federal agencies. I know that the Musk mandate, some people are calling it. Are they going to really follow through? And if they do, and they start implementing some of these things, how much resistance will they meet among the media or even the voting public? We can't underestimate the media. They're going to be in business, and Trump is good for business. So we'll see how much cover he gets, and then before there's basically a public relations war between Trump and the media, and then how that filters down into the public, and then certainly the voters' sentiment, and then before you know it, we're going to have the midterms. But in any case, we asked the question: does he have a mandate? And what we have here is 44% says yes, he has a mandate to implement all these changes. Now, I didn't know where that number was going to fall. I suspected it could be in the high 30s, and then I thought maybe it could even be in the high 40s. Based on all the other questions or the responses I was getting about Trump's favorability and the optimism and the satisfaction of the 2024 election. But it looks like what we have here is Trump's core support, which is about 44%. They are giving Trump a full mandate to implement the changes that he ran on. However, we also see that we have about a 25% of that saying yes, but only for some of those changes. But you add them all together, and that's a 69% for at least some of Trump's policies. The voters are saying, we give you a mandate. The full mandate, though, question is, are we splitting hairs with that? Perhaps, but I definitely wanted to gauge the type of support, level of support Trump had on some of these more, perhaps we call them controversial policies that he ran on and pushed. But to his credit, he ran on them for years, and he was awarded and he was elected. But full mandate, it's not there. You add some of the partial mandate or some of the partial voters who think some of these are he has a full mandate on some of these issues. Then again, we're at Trump 69% to 31%. Not bad numbers at all. But I don't know how much resistance he'd meet. I particularly don't even know if he cares, to be honest. He got elected, he won, he's pushing through. We'll see. Things will take their course. We'll see how the Senate reacts. We'll see how the House reacts, and of course, the midterms will tell us everything. So here's what putting these mandate questions to task here. So we got full mandate, yes, but only some of those, and then a flat out no. So if we have the yes mandate, almost half of the males in this respondent said yes. 39% of the females. White support was at 47% for a full mandate. Look at the black support, for 33%. The Hispanic support was 43%. Typically, I expected this among the 18 to 29-year-olds. It's a little less, or a lot more less, a lot less. But then you see his core support, the 30 to 44, the 45 to 64, back up to 47%. So we're not at that 50% in any of these demographics. The closest we got, it looks like here, was the male at 49%, female at 39%. But we look at only some of those. We start looking at, it's the rest start peeling off here, and it's roughly something along the lines of no as well. But interesting, he never popped 50% for the yes question or yes response across any of these demographics. Okay, now, how optimistic are you about the next 4 years under President Trump's leadership? So we're trying to gauge the expectations, which, the country is on the wrong track, according to the voters, by 68%, 69% around election week or election day. This is a good sign, perhaps, for the voting public, and maybe the confidence comes back, certainly along the economic factors. Again, this is a little more ammo for Trump. He's going into Inauguration Day vastly different and vastly in a better place than he was in 2016 when he went in for inauguration. When he in 2016, but as he was swearing in on the Bible, I mean, you had media outlets posting and releasing op-eds in front. The front of their page was "Democracy dies in darkness. The resistance starts now." When Trump walked into the White House, when they opened the door for him and said, "Hey, this is your new office," he had landmines waiting for him on the Republican side as well as the Democrat side. The guy was under siege as soon, or actually before, they were already planning some things, but as soon as he assumed the presidency, it was really a fight for survival. I mean, there was lawfare, there was there was stuff being drug out, there was obviously the Russian hoax. I'm not going to go back in through all this, but it was just one accusation after another. Then it was investigations and then impeachments, and they did what they did. And was able to get the House back to the Democrats. And it was just a really nasty era of politics. I'm not so sure, well, actually I am sure, that won't happen this time. It just doesn't, there's just too much support here they'd have to read the tea leaves. They'd be picking fights they probably couldn't win this time. The voting public was skeptical of Trump. They didn't know any better. They believed some of these stories about Trump as being a Russian asset, and the election was stolen, et cetera. And then fast forward to 2020, and then there was a lot of funky stuff going on with the election. And then we're back to Trump again. So it looks like Biden's one-term, 4 years in office was more or less of a speed bump back to the Trump era, and he's been given a second chance by the voters. All right, so we're going to go down here to some of the media stuff. Not terribly important, but I just wanted to capture how Twitter played a part in the election, how the Americans consumed their information, and what did they prefer. I was a little surprised by this. I assumed that Twitter would be a little higher in terms of the activity, but maybe the terminally online crowd maybe amplifies the Twitter impact, and then reality doesn't really match Twitter. You hear a lot of that, Twitter's not real life. Well, this may be a good graph to see to sort of explain that. In any case, here we got. How did you, what was your primary source of access to news? How did you get your information, share your information during the 24 election? And Twitter is at 14%. Traditional media, 42%. Now it's not at 50% or up. So, it's losing its influence. You have other social media platforms as well, Facebook, Instagram. This really impacts. So you add those two together, and then you're up, you're running neck and neck with traditional legacy media. And then here is, I wanted to get the trust factor for the media platforms. 30% of Americans said, "I generally trust and prefer news from traditional media outlets." So a little, that's not anything to be proud of, but it is higher than some of your more, let's say, not in any case, I'm not going to go there. So I generally trust and prefer news from X over traditional media outlets. It's 15%. That, again, I didn't know what to expect when I ran this poll. I didn't know what the answers were going to be, obviously, but it does kind of bring things back to reality that Twitter may not be quite as impactful as we thought during the election. I think it does for those who were, super dedicated to the election, super dedicated to politics, really interested in it, and they're constantly, on that feed, but most people aren't. If you take a step back, most people don't really think about politics all that much. And if they start paying attention, it's usually closer to the election. There's plenty of research that backs that up. And then you have this whopping 43% of these almost nearly half of the people that took this poll said they don't use X. So again, I think this is a great way to wrap this survey up. Twitter is not real life. For good or for bad, I don't know. Maybe it'll play more of a bigger impact as the next 4 years roll on, as Musk rolls out these new features. But in any case, Twitter is not real life. All right, I got some folks here that want to jump on. I want to add my old buddy here, Mike. Let me stop sharing. Let's add Mike to the stage. What's up, Mike?
Hey, brother, what's going on?
I don't know if that was informative or not, but I wanted to go over those results of the poll. Let's see what we got here. And I was just making sure we had folks. Yeah, anyway, the results of the post-election survey. And here we are, Trump in a much different position than he was in all of his term, all of his entire first term. I mean, we're talking 43% approval and probably even less than that in favorabilities or running neck and neck. Now, he did kind of increase, year over year incrementally. Amazingly, I think at the end of by the time the election rolled around in 2020, he was at closer to 46%, 46% approval.
So.
Yeah, fighting off a pandemic, and the media was.
I mean, back then, all things considered. Considered.
Let's see. Hold on, man.
Sorry.
Alex. Oh, I got you, Alex. Yeah, you can get through these. You can get bogged down in some very specific topics, and like I said, that last slide here is Twitter's not real life. It amplifies things quite a bit. But the Syrian war, I almost did a video on that, and I wanted to. I might share, another time. It used to be my neck of the woods back in the day. It is interesting how that war popped up all of a sudden. I'm sure Turkey had something to do with it. Maybe the U.S. had something to do with it. It's great proxy warfare to weaken Putin and sort of diminish his reach, get him out of Latakia or Tartus, remove his influence because Russia is also in Africa, et cetera. I think they're just trying to push Putin and his influence back to Russia and set the table for maybe something else. We'll see how that shakes out, though. But that's for another video. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was just going to say, all things considered in 2020, just kind of coming off your last point, he was actually positioned rather well, all things considered, with the way the handling of COVID and all of the lawfare that was going, it had come to an end, but it still did its damage. But I just wanted to kind of tag along on that point. But to your point about what you found with the media, I don't know if you were aware, but Bezos is either having or had a meeting with Trump about working, with the legacy media. And the funny part is, what I really found interesting in your last point about those numbers between where people get their information from, social media and all the other outlets are almost tied with the legacy media. And I think, as I hate to say this, but as the boomers kind of pass on, I think that, that delta is going to grow. And right now, what they're really kind of doing is almost fighting for ownership of Trump. I call it the new media. It's kind of under the Joe Rogan umbrella, if you will. Bezos is kind of looking for his. I'm not saying all the coverage is going to be good. Obviously, it's Trump and the media. I don't think that's something that's ever going to go away. But they're trying to mitigate and stay relevant.
That's the key word right there, relevant. Access to power, right? And being relevant. And look, man, they're in this to make money, and they see that their influence is waning, right? Their trust is falling. And then they see this advent of social media coming in, and these numbers are small. I mean, it's relatively small, 15 to 30%. Okay, half of, but where was that number at 5 years ago? Where is that number projected to be 5 years from now? Right. So you're quickly out of business.
That's the thing.
Yep. If you don't adapt, and look, they have some making up to do. They do, and they know they do. I'm not saying that they're going to be the bootlickers, and they're not, and nor should they be, to be honest with you. I mean, they have bootlickers when the Democrats in office, but that's just the way it goes. But 98% of your media and journalistic workforce is Democrat, and openly so. I mean, it's not hard to figure out. But they do have some making up to do in terms of restoring trust. They bit in on the Russian hoax. And I was talking about that democracy dies in darkness. That was the Washington Post. The resistance starts now. And it was just this big orgy of just a tantrum, and it got us nowhere, and it got us extremely divided. And what happens? They're right back to where they started. Trump is back in office.
Yep.
And all you did was ruin your reputation. All you did was ruin your reputation, and you still lost.
Right. And you threw all of those resources, material, effort, and you're living in a world now where, the DNC just fired 2/3 of its staff, kind of bouncing off of that.
Wow.
You had this unfortunate killing of, an insurance company CEO in New York. I have my issues with large companies and the people who run them, but my issues don't include killing them. All right. That's any sane person. I think we all think the same. Now, that being said, if you look at some of the online reaction to the murder, Taylor Lorenz is first one that jumps in my mind. She was basically celebrating this man's murder, and she posted the picture of Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO. I mean, this is some crazy stuff. Okay,
It's just
you're
bizarre.
you're advocating. Yeah, no, you're advocating for the murder of another human being, so on and so forth. All the while wondering in the next breath why people are abandoning what you thought they believed in. Why they're moving away from it, why they're sick of it. Nobody wants this crap. No sane person, but I'm just saying, like, as an example of what you were talking about with wokeism, kind of backing up on some of the questions. These are things that these things float around on social media. People get contact with it eventually. And I mean, even if it's a momentary, just kind of shaking your head, it gets logged, in the back of your mind. And eventually, when it comes time to make a decision on which way you're going to go, a lot of these things are remembered and they form an opinion. Nobody wants to be associated with that kind of stuff.
No, I agree. And look, Mike, look right here. This is from our Qantas Substack. The leftward shift in the Democratic Party, alienating the median voter. I mean, I won't go into all the
Yep.
All the points, but I mean, image is power here. I mean, look at the years. Look at the trek. Look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even there.
It's not surprising.
They've left the reservation in a lot of ways, and now you're starting to see some of these Democrat leaders are trying to pull it back to the working class. They abandoned the working class. They opted in for this urban elitism or these East Coast, West Coast strips of elite human capital. Yeah, they raised a lot of money. That didn't help them in 2016. They barely got the result they wanted in 2020.
No.
And it didn't help them at all in 2024. I mean, she raised what, 1.5, maybe 2. Man, now they're saying maybe $2 billion. She ended up $20 million in debt, and she still lost the election, and it really wasn't all that close. If we look here, I mean, look.
And a Republican won the popular vote.
Yeah, look at this tail. Look at this tail here. So Democrat political elites and influencers. Look at this tail. Look how long, right? This is the influence it has. And you look at your Republicans, you got a nice, healthy bell curve, right? It's a little tighter than the American voter itself, but your tail. It's just this is just an amazing illustration of how the Democratic Party,
how crazy everything's become.
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to. So the Insider Advantage poll, if you look at the approval, right, or the favorabilities, our African American vote that I just showed was at 29%. Insider Advantage has it at 32%. And then our Hispanic support was at 50%. It was 50-50. They have it at 49%. So we're not the only one picking up this trend. And they use the word unusually high. I was thinking the same thing as I was putting this poll together. And I was waiting, and I'm like, wow, is it really that high? How did he increase so much from November 5th among these demographics to where this post-election poll is. And I wanted to wait a month or so, about a month after the election, because I wanted to see the results. I wanted people to accept the fact that Trump won, or for good or bad, and then see some of these picks come across, and see how the American voter reacted to it and what they thought about it. And it looks like Trump he's gaining in popularity. He's gaining in support. You saw the question about satisfaction. You saw the question about optimism. You saw the question about the mandate. However, I kind of knew that mandate was going to be, look, man, Americans are fishy about that stuff. Americans are fishy about that stuff. They're not big on mandates. And better, a great example.
I have my,
a great example. A great example for that was Obama in 2008. 53 point something percent of the popular vote, and John McCain 45.6 or 7% of the popular vote. Obama wins 340 something electoral college votes, and he lost the midterms 2 years later, completely.
Yeah, well, and he had the supermajority in Congress.
And he had the supermajority. So if you want to talk about mandates, that's the last most recent one that I can think of. And it didn't last 2 years. In fact, it started going downhill pretty quickly. And then two years after that, he loses the Senate. He never had the House or the Senate. And then what's that statistic? What's that number? Over the course of his presidency, the Democrats lost over 1,000 seats, House. Or,
yeah, it was statewide.
Yeah, state house and
state legislative body.
Yep, plus
and governorship,
Congress
and governorships, and the governorships. Well, I think he exploited all of his political capital with two major pieces of legislation that were not very popular. And I bring this up because Trump has to tread very carefully with his application of policy. The first one was when he signed I want to say it was the Small Business Recovery Act or whatever. It was basically some Keynesian economic package designed to jumpstart the economy after 2008. And then, of course, he took the rest of his political capital and dumped it into healthcare, Obamacare. And, that's really, I mean, even if you look at the numbers back in around 2010, where direction of the country was concerned, it's even higher than it is now. That's something that I've always used that as like a baseline for an estimate on the, like a thermometer for the feelings of the way people feel about the country. He wasted everything he had on those two very large pieces of policy. They rolled it out wrong. He got arrogant. And I think that's what it was. And when the time came, they learned how to deal with it down the road, but it was too late. The damage was already done because you had the Tea Party forming and all that other stuff. But enough about the history lesson, jumping to Trump. He's got to be careful how they frame these arguments and how they present them, because he has a far less cooperative Congress. I mean, you look, I think it's like 220 to 215.
Yeah,
Senate's pretty good.
It's not much different than the Congress he had from 2016 to 2018 when it was Republican owned. Except most of the leadership in the Republican Party didn't want to work with Trump. And matter of fact, they actively worked against Trump behind. There was a lot of nastiness that was going on.
You don't have the saboteurs,
Yeah. So I mean, the wall thing was shut down from the start, even though Trump ran on the wall and won. They were like, oh, well, we're not going to do the wall. It was always that nonsense. But it looks like here, Trump got a little smarter, and he's got some other things in his bag, such as tariffs and as long as the wall, and he's just gonna force Mexico to comply instead of relying on the wall so much. So we'll see how that works.
Well, that was one of the greatest tactics and strategies of his last presidency, because I mean, if you look at the numbers of crossings when he got Mexico on board with that, having the Mexican military at the border and them stopping the migrations from Central America. I mean, it went from a fire hose to a trickle. So he's just basically reinstating old policies that,
Well,
he knows work. But the problem is, obviously, they're dealing with a different administration in Mexico now. So,
it
but
doesn't.
he does have quite a bit of political capital.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, to a certain degree, it really doesn't matter the new administration or not. They'll get a strongly worded letter telling them what they have to do and what
Right.
they don't. I mean, and I'm not gloating or making it sound
No,
like this
no.
is fun. I'm just saying that's the way the game is played, and if it comes to that, is what I'm getting at. He prefers. I'm sure any
Right.
president prefers cooperation,
Of
but
course.
there's certain policies that he ran on that he has to be accountable for now. He was elected on those policies, and he can't allow an external force to derail that, to undermine him, because he's accountable to the voters who elected him. So there's a
Right.
package of things that the president can do, or a president can do, especially when it comes to your close allies or people you share borders with. There's a lot of things you can do. If you start calling them a narco state and things of that nature, that implies, I think you and I spoke about that on the last video, that implies some very, serious matters when a president starts to use that kind of language.
Yes.
Means the military, military options and stuff. Not that I don't know if
I mean,
they'll ever come to that.
you're basically in the eyes of the United States government, you're basically one step away from a failed state.
Yep.
And Mexico doesn't need that kind of heat.
Yeah, I think, didn't they just recently turn away a caravan of human traffic here recently, like this week?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. It was a Guatemalan caravan. I think I remember hearing something about it, but I didn't go down too much on the rabbit hole on it.
Yeah. All right.
I mean,
well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. I mean, yeah, you're right about that stuff. He's got to deliver, though.
No, he does. I mean, that's the thing about, that's the tricky part about elections, especially presidential elections. You get about a 2-year sprint, and then you get the midterms. The voters will let you know,
Yep.
If they approve or disapprove, and sometimes not delivering equals disapproval, and then sometimes delivering too much that they didn't ask for equals disapproval. So it's a fine line here. The good news is it looks like Trump won quite a lot of districts, congressional districts that the Republicans will need to win in 2020 to keep the House. As long as Trump is above water, he's probably got a decent shot at keeping the House. But that's for another battle. We'll know how things play out. Look, we haven't even got to Inauguration Day yet. There's a lot of things that's still left among his picks, but Trump is showing his cards early. I mean, he's telling you what he's going to do on the first day while he's in office. One of those things is paper ballots. I'm assuming he's going to come out and talk about the fact that they're still counting votes a month later, which is just an absolute travesty. It's a joke. It's embarrassing. It truly is embarrassing.
And also, I think there was some talk about a federal ID requirement.
Oh yeah,
which is something that's relatively popular among the voters. If I'm remembering, the old polling on the issue, I think it was substantially over 50% of people approved of voter ID laws. They view it kind of from a pragmatic lens. Why aren't we doing that? I think is the question a lot of people ask. It's not we should do it. It's like, why aren't we doing it?
It'd be interesting.
The one of the things. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You were talking.
Oh, I mean, all I was going to say, I mean, the left is, they're banging, they're going to bang the drum. Oh, it's racist. Like most black people don't have a license or a state ID. I mean, it's that white savior crap that they're embroiled in.
What it comes down to is the marginalized communities, and what it is immigrants. And if they're legal, then they don't have anything to worry about. If they're illegal, then then they shouldn't be in the country anyway. And it doesn't look like and it looks like they're serious about doing this, these deportations and getting folks out. This is going to be. We'll see what the stomach. We'll see what America's stomach is like. Does it have the stomach for this? Because I can tell you that the media is probably salivating at the fact of writing some hard-hitting op-eds and investigative journalism, and they'll probably profile some immigrant that was separated from his. Dude, it's going to be the Iraq War 2.0 and how the media tore down Bush, rightly so in some ways.
Yeah,
we'll see how much power the media has in curtailing this and fighting it, because I think there's a lot of anti. Anyway, we won't get into that. It's quite their loyalties are very questionable. I'll say that. It just seems like there's this provide. Let's see here. EBR mayor president race. East Baton Rouge mayor president race this Saturday. I've seen zero polling on this leading up from a local outlets. That's Alex. So I actually know a young man that's involved in that campaign, and I was going to help him poll that back in October, I think. But what do I think about it? I don't know, honestly. I'm surprised that he did. I think it's Sid Edwards. He did extremely well. He got to the runoff. I don't know if he was. I think he barely was losing to the incumbent mayor. I forgot her name. I could Google it. He's going to need some Democrat support, and you have a month to kind of build that coalition and make some calls. If she's unpopular and they want her out of there, maybe he could sneak by and win it. I think he actually won it. I think he actually won the first round of voting. Barely. I think there's a statistic number saying if you win the first round of voting, you typically have a certain amount of chance to win. But I don't know, man. It comes down to favorable demographics, and if the turnout among the Democrats are high enough to swamp what little, if Sid Edwards can, 34%, and Broome got 28%. Was the third candidate a Democrat, or is he independent? Sorry, guys, we got some comments here. And I want to answer it. East, if you have
Baton Rouge.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yes, all Dems besides Sid. Okay, that's right. I didn't know if it was.
Got to jump off. Got some stuff coming in, but it's been fun. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Peace. Yeah. So, Ted James with D Challenger. I don't know. It seems like it's just more favorable to Democrats because obviously you had two Democrats fighting over the same voting block. But some of that support will go to Sid, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. I haven't done a deep dive into how that looks. I would probably assume it's not very favorable for a Republican to win that seat. I don't know if they want her out of there though. I don't know. It's probably not. I couldn't say either way. Are you from Louisiana? Are you from that area? I can tell you I'm originally from Louisiana, but not down by Baton Rouge. I'm going to look up. Oh, yeah. Okay, Prairieville. I got you. Yep. Let's see here. I want to look up. Okay. In 2020, she won pretty convincingly by 13. She beat Steve Carter, the Republican. In 2016, it was much closer. It was 51.8 to 48. Oh, yeah, I did look at this. I recall. I was trying to help my Kip Holden, Mike Wallace. Kip Holden won. Actually, she outright won in 2016. She got a majority of the vote, even with a Republican and another Democrat in there, 13-29. You know, that's a strong showing, though, 56-43 in 2024. And then Sid Edwards, 34-30. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look favorable to Sid, if I had to say one way or the other. After graduating LSU, got an apartment. Got you. Yeah, I don't think it's probably favorable once the Democrats come together behind one candidate. It may be close, maybe closer than they want it to be, but I'd probably be leaning towards Broome. But again, I don't know this lady's history. I don't know how happy they are with her leadership, and if she's been, if it's some corruption going on. I really don't know. I know East Baton Rouge has its issues, crime, jobs, et cetera. And I know corruption has been on the table, but Louisiana politics is always flavored and colored with some good Louisiana style corruption. It's a carnival, and our politics and personalities is a big thing down in Louisiana. But yeah, so we're gonna wrap this up though, Alex. I appreciate the questions, man. We're gonna drop because we've been on about an hour. I wanted to go over that poll and discuss. Unless you got any questions about the poll itself, we're going to go ahead and drop here, man. I appreciate you joining. We had a few other people join as well, and I didn't see some of the comments. I think I had a couple private comments, but I didn't get to those. But we're going to pick back up tomorrow. I got Eric Dougherty from the Twitter, from Florida Voice, big Twitter account. He threw us a lot of shout outs in the 2024 election. He and I did a video in the past. We're going to do another one about Joe Biden. Joe Biden's approval ratings and then his legacy based on the last 4 years of his presidency, the Hunter Biden pardon, and kind of where this thing fell apart for him, and kind of, what it means if there even is a legacy, which it doesn't look like there's going to be much of a legacy for Biden, after, not that he had much of a legacy before, but I want to. All right, guys, it's been fun. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.